What is the scariest slash creepiest slash most disturbing thing you have ever encountered? Serious. My mother always told me to close my window blinds as a kid before I went to sleep. I usually remembered, but one night I forgot. I woke up in the middle of the night to an old man staring through my window, smiling. We stared at each other for like 10 seconds. I calmly got out of bed and walked to my mum's room. On the way there, I passed the living room and saw someone walking past our living room windows. I went to sleep in her bed and never brought it up. I was dropping off a rider in NJ from Manhattan and decided to pick up a couple of rides near Newark. A guy gets in my car with his family and sits in the front seat. He then turns my way and doesn't talk for like 2 to 3 minutes. I'm now officially creeped out and start thinking I should move a little faster. Then he starts to ask where I'm from. I'm instantly even more on alert and say Brooklyn. He says no, where are you originally from? And I'm like, dude, Brooklyn. He starts getting agitated and asks, where are your parents from? And I'm like, Brooklyn. Then he screams, dude, where are they originally from? And I'm now officially terrified. His daughter starts screaming in the back, telling him to stop cause he's scaring me, and to be honest, I lost all control and may have started going through reds. Not once did I even think about looking in his direction. Made a 15-minute ride in like 6 minutes, and not once was I stupid enough to mention that my family originally came from Pakistan. He started yelling at his family next and Dell began to regret taking rides in NJ. I was trapped in a box with a maniac and kept expecting a knife or a gun to pop into his hands any second. I was pretty happy when I pulled into a gated building and the police was there. I dropped him off, turned off the app and drove all the way back to the city without a rider. Lesson learned, no more driving in NJ. When I was 16, my parents got a divorce and I went through the typical angst. Part of it was firmly denouncing religion and anything not explained by science. My mom, sister and I moved into a creepy old house where they both complained of paranormal instances, which I was quick to dismiss. I came home from a track meet around 7:30 p.m. on a Friday. When I came in, I heard my sister hysterically laughing with her signature snort. I asked her, what's so funny, Taylor? And while barely speaking through the laughing and snorting, she replied, just come up here, it's hilarious. I slowly walk up the creaky steps as I listened to her laugh the entire time. She kept saying, you gotta see this, come up here. When I opened the door it was pitch black and she was nowhere to be found. Then I realized when I drove into the driveway there were no other cars. I was home alone. I then remembered my mom and sister had gone to tour colleges that weekend. I got my ass out of there as soon as possible. I now believe I know nothing about this world. Edit. Hysterically laughing. No, I did not move after that, but I didn't spend a single night in that house for a year. This experience ended up motivating me to move into my dad's house for the rest of high school and ever when I came back from college in the summers. About 5 years ago, a few buddies and I went camping in Tennessee. We were on mountain bikes, so we were able to get way far out from civilization and set up camp in the middle of the woods. This was not a camping area, so we didn't run into any other people, and we were so far away from anything we didn't expect to. We all went to sleep without incident, and it was as dark can be outside with clouds blocking the moon. After being asleep for a couple of hours I heard leaves crunching probably about 20 feet from our tent. It was obviously footsteps. I then noticed a little bit of light shining on the tent from what I assume was a flashlight. Then I hear 2 men whispering. Then I hear yell, asleep in there? My instinct was to remain completely silent, and I didn't make a sound. Eventually I heard more footsteps heading away from the tent until eventually I heard nothing again. Needless to say I got absolutely no sleep after that, and I woke my buddies up about 10 minutes later to tell them. In the morning there was no sign of anybody, and we left quickly. Never figured it out. I was 21 and just moved to a college town living in my own. I noticed my AC unit was being turned off during the day. I thought maybe it was maintenance or a faulty breaker. So I talked to property management. They couldn't figure it out. I brushed it off. Then I started coming home and there was dishes I didn't remember leaving in the sink. A cereal bowl, a fork. I had a brain tumor, so I was concerned my memory was getting really bad. Then one day, while I was in the shower, I thought I heard a man downstairs. I turned off my shower, froze, and grabbed a razor. I realized the door had no locks, so I braced myself against the sunken door. I held my breath and listened. I frantically texted my high school friend who lived in the unit next door. When I heard his voice, I flew downstairs, and he was staring at ammunition on my carpet. Just bullets, scattered everywhere. And this began the 3-year saga of my stalker, and we made the first of multiple police calls. So while not traditionally creepy, those bullets made my skin crawl and heart sink. I knew someone wanted to hurt me and had been watching me. When I was 5 years old I had a nightmare. In that nightmare there was a man, and he just stood there doing nothing but repeatedly saying you won't wake up over and over. I was scared to the point I couldn't move. When I woke up from the nightmare, I could still see and hear my dream. He was laughing at me. I forcefully opened my eyes with my hands, but I couldn't get him out of my head. I was so frightened I was about to cry. I got up from my bed and felt my way to the kitchen where my mum was making breakfast. I tugged on her shirt, and asked her to help me, but she just said just open your eyes. I tried to show her my eyes were open. They are. But she didn't turn around and ignored me. Well, if mom wasn't going to help me, then I was. I thought if I went back to sleep I could fight this laughing man for my freedom. So I went back to bed and closed my eyes. And eventually the man and his laughing faded as I counted down from 10. Immediately I ran back out to mum, just to make sure that what happened was actually real, but she just laughed and ignored me again. To this day I have never felt so betrayed by someone. I know this doesn't seem serious, but when I saw like 10 raccoons and they all started chasing me all the way to my house, and I was 3 blocks away, but I ran the entire distance without stop, and after I got into my house I had a good night after that. I was at my friend's house at 9 o'clock and it was dark. I got a short one from a while back, maybe 8 years ago. At the time my wife was pregnant, 2 kids were in the living room with us, and 2 kids were upstairs in their bedroom with the door closed. The oldest in the room with us went to microwave something and accidentally turned in the gas stove without lighting it. A half hour later we realize what happened, so I turn it off and open some windows. A few minutes later the kids from upstairs run down screaming and crying because someone was banging on their door. They thought it was me messing with them at first, so we laughed it off. Well, at first, until they said they saw black boots and heard heavy steps in the hallway. I was downstairs the entire time. Right after they finished telling their story the lid to the hamper came flying down the steps. No windows we open up there and there was never any circulation through the house. We left for a while to calm them down. The gas was on for half an hour. You opened the windows downstairs. 2 kids were still upstairs with no open windows and no circulation of air. Gas flows upwards. I'm glad those kids were alright. Someone going through a schizophrenic episode and assaulting me. He believed that I worked for the government and that I was only dating him because my boss told me to. He was drunk and became verbally and physically aggressive. It was incredibly disturbing watching someone go from happy-go-lucky to dark and threatening. Edit. I'm not trying to crap on mental health issues. Schizophrenia is a somewhat misunderstood disorder, and I'm aware that he was not entirely in his right mind. However, he left his mark on me, and I may never get better. I was about 9 at the time, and I was trying to sleep. I didn't have any curtains or any sort of window coverings. I look out my window to see a woman, grinning from ear to ear. She slowly backs away from my window, and I go ballistic and run the duck out of my room. Needless to say I slept with my parents for a few weeks afterwards. Edit. Holy duck, I just remembered something scarier. Buckle up buckaroos. I assure you I'm fully conscious during this. So I'm about 6, and I'm sitting in bed sleeping, without a cover. All of a sudden I wake up, and my vision is tilted red. I thought must have busted a blood vessel or some shit. Rango. Then out of nowhere my muscles tense up, and I feel like millions and millions of tiny needles are pricking my skin. I can't move whatsoever, and paranoia kicks in. I hear this deep, like death metal singing deep, laughter in my head. I'm shaking and can't stop the laughter. A few seconds pass and everything is normal again. I can't sleep now without making sure that a cover covers everything. I have a few stories. If you want another from me, say so. First one, and probably the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. Me being a teenage boy, I love gadgets. I had a pair of night vision goggles for a while and decided to replace the batteries after like 2 years. So at maybe 2 AM if I remember, I walked downstairs while wearing them. I saw something at the bottom of the stairs. I took my goggles off to see it better. Nothing was there. I went down a couple steps and saw the figure of a young girl, maybe about 10. After knowing that what I'm seeing is very unusual, I don't feel panicked, scared, anxious, etc. I was completely calm, as if it was my cat/dog. I take the goggles off, and she's gone once more. I get closer, maybe about 5 feet, and put them back on. She is there. I could see all of the detail of her. She was a small white girl with brown hair. She was wearing a garden hat with yellow flowers on it. The dress she was wearing also had yellow flowers on it. Very familiar flowers. We just looked at each other for what felt like a minute. I get creeped out and go upstairs to tell me sister. I described the girl to her and she pointed at her painting she bought from a supposedly haunted thrift shop. It's the flowers. We both then start freaking out. This was about 4 months ago. I haven't seen her again since. Edit. For all the people that don't believe me, I understand how you can see this as fake. I don't have a proper explanation. This is how I remember it. I can say myself, I might be wrong, but again, this is how I remember it.